It's been 2 weeks. We haven't recorded since Halloween, but we're back here on No Butts About It. Welcome back to No Butts About It. I am Josh. That is Chus. He is in his basement in Pittsburgh. I'm in my dining room in Indiana. And we figured out a way to make it look like Chus isn't sitting in the dark anymore. So that's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, because I mean, my other camcorder I don't know for anyone that's been watching the show for a longer period of time. When we were on Riverside, now we have moved to StreamYard. Riverside, the camera always looked kind of blurry and kind of rough. And I decided to invest in a pluggable, portable, whatever you want to call it, webcam. And I thought it looked better, but it always picked up a lot darker. And then when we moved to StreamYard, I mean, it was still dark, but then Josh was complaining moments ago about why it was even darker than before. So I said, well, I'm using the camcorder that I got about a couple of months, maybe it's more than that. It's been a year now. I got this camcorder. I'm going to show you the difference. And then sure enough, the built-in camera for whatever reason looks a lot better on StreamYard than the plugged-in Amazon camera that I bought. So I don't know, maybe this will be the new norm, but it looks a lot brighter now. So everyone thinks I'm in the dark. It's not like a dungeon. It's fine. We're good. I mean, it might be a little slower than this one. I mean, the other camera kind of picked up things a lot quicker, but yeah.
We'll see. I like it better. It doesn't look like you're in a dungeon. Tom lets you out of the basement sometimes, I think. So shout out Tom. Isaiah Martin, shout out to him, told me, hey, you guys need to get back into the recording studio because I'm out of episodes of No Butts About It to watch. So he's on his way home to Valparaiso. So he needs a new episode. So that's why we're here. It's just been super busy. I have 3 jobs. Chus has a bunch of jobs in school. It's hard to get into the studio these days, but you know what? We find a way and we keep going.
You power through. Power through.
Let's talk about some football. Cincinnati Bengals beat the Raiders. Looked promising. Trey Hendrickson had 4 sacks. Joe Burrow was carving up that Raiders defense. And then they lost to the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. And
questionable. I've seen that picture rolling around all over my feed.
Which one? You talking about the
3 face masks at the end of the game?
Oh yeah, on that 2-point conversion. So first of all, I've had this debate with some people, and I think they're all wrong. If you're listening, I liked the call to go for the 2-point conversion. And I've been told I'm an idiot for that, and I'm okay with that. The reason I'm okay with it was because my biggest critique of Zach Taylor up to this point has been his conservativeness. He is not aggressive. He doesn't go for it. He doesn't, keep his foot on the gas pedal. Against the Raiders, we did until Joe Burrow threw a pick 6, and then the game got close all of a sudden, which I don't think that was Joe's fault. That was just a great play by Jack Jones. Shout out Jack Jones.
I had a friend growing up named Jack Jones.
Does he play for the Las Vegas Raiders now?
He does not. No. How old is Jack Jones for the Las Vegas Raiders?
Well, let's do some on-the-spot research. But my point was, against the Ravens, 26 years old.
Okay, yeah. No, he's my age. He'd be like 23.
But my point, against the Ravens, he was going for it on 4th downs when it was smart to, not just for the sake of it, which is good. And then the 2-point conversion, I understand that Ravens have Justin Tucker, and it's like, hey, they're probably just going to go down and kick a field goal and win it anyway. Why don't you just take it to overtime? And I'm like, I don't want to go into overtime against Lamar Jackson's offense with the overtime rules the way they are, because we have no guarantee that Joe Burrow even gets his hands on the ball in overtime. if there is a chance with the 2-point conversion that the Bengals can just win the game there and the defense can somehow hold the Ravens outside of field goal range and take that win, I think you got to take it. And now where I will say on the 2-point conversion, why are you drawing up a play where Jamar Chase isn't only not the first read? And this is what lost them against the Ravens the first time. They had Jamar Chase one-on-one with Nate Wiggins to win. They could have won it at the end of the first game against the Ravens. Didn't go to him. They ran the ball 3 times. This time on the 2-point conversion, the first read is Tanner Hudson. Not Mike Gesicki, not Jamar Chase, not anyone who you think it would be. It's Tanner Hudson. Now, granted, Mike Gesicki got thrown to the ground by arguably illegal touching penalty that could have been called, and then there were those hands to the face penalties that weren't called and face mask penalties that weren't called the entire drive. But still, that Zach Taylor just he keeps shooting himself in the foot. He was doing so well that game, and then that play, I was just like, what the heck? The Bengals suck. The Bengals suck on defense.
I mean, that was something that I was kind of concerned with this season for you guys, was a little bit about your defense, not necessarily the offense. I mean, your offense is still relatively high powered. I mean, regardless of Joe Mixon leaving, I mean, I feel like you guys have found a really solid running back in Chase Brown. I mean, that's just me. I don't know. I mean, it seems like he's been getting heavy workloads and he's been doing pretty consistently with Zach Moss being out for the rest of the season. But I was always kind of worried with the defense, and it is kind of concerning though, because some of the pieces that you would think would be being utilized in your team. I mean, and this goes offense or defense. I mean, I feel like it's a little, concerning just because obviously I don't know what's going on with Burton. I don't know if he got even more reps. Some of these other players, I don't know if they're getting burned. Remember, we were high on Jordan Battle, and then Jordan Battle's been benched. I don't really know what's going on over in Cincy. I don't know if it's a good thing that they're being benched and they're not being utilized, or if it's a bad thing. I mean, obviously you'd be more of an expert on that case scenario, but I don't know. It's been a interesting. I mean, you guys should have won that Ravens game. I genuinely think you should have won. I mean,
we should have won both of them. We should have won the Chiefs game. There's so many this team could realistically be 8-2.
Yeah.
There's a list somewhere. I don't have it right now, but there was a list of very minimal small plays that if they didn't happen, the Bengals win. Week 1, it started right away. Tanner Hudson fumbles on the goal line. That caused a 14-point swing. I mean, this defense is so bad. And I have except for Trey Hendrickson, and people are mad at Logan Wilson, but he's top 3 in tackles, so I'm not really going to blame him for that too much. I just have a hard time believing that all of the players regressed at the exact same time.
Do you think morale is down?
I think the scheme concept isn't working.
Scheme? I was going to say, do you think they do you think that the locker room is lost? Do you think that they don't the coaching isn't there? What are you pinpointing one or the other?
I don't know that the locker room is lost. I think this is the most upset that I've ever seen Joe Burrow though, and Joe isn't someone who has a lot of words, but just in his tone. And to have Zach Taylor come out every week and be like, oh, I still believe in this team and we're going to get it together. It's it's week 10.
Yeah.
There is a path forward, but you've got to figure it out now. And Joe came out and he said, no, we suck. We aren't good. This team isn't going to win a Super Bowl the way that we're playing. And I know Sam Hubbard's older, has been struggling with injuries. Not great. Okay. Why are Dax Hill got hurt? So, okay. But Miles Murphy, we spent a first-round pick on Miles Murphy, and he's a backup. Jordan Battle, spent a third-round pick on him, and he's been getting more playing time recently, but he's still behind Geno Stone and Von Bell. We spent $7.5 million a year on a 2-year contract for Geno Stone. The Falcons spent 1 year, $8 million for Justin Simmons. For $500,000 more, we could have gotten Justin Simmons.
You think that would have helped you?
I think Justin Simmons is a stud. And I think that Geno Stone has, and again, this could be part of the scheme. I have no idea. He was great with the Ravens, but Mike McDonald is a great defensive coordinator. The Ravens have always had a great defense. They're great at hiring defensive coaches, but Geno Stone's awful this year. He's taking bad angles. He's not being coached well. I don't know what's going on. I just, like I said, I have a really hard time believing everyone on the Bengals defense simultaneously got bad. And I know you lost DJ Reader and you have rookies at DT and BJ Hill has been stepping up, but you're losing BJ Hill next year. And it doesn't make sense to me that Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Akeem Davis Gaither, Von Bell, Geno Stone, Jordan Battle, and Sam Hubbard all simultaneously were just like, eh. That makes no sense. So, I mean, we're talking about some long form videos that we're going to put out here before the show. Here's a little tease. Chus is going to put out the first one because he has an idea already. I think I've got an idea, and I think I'm going to put out a video talking about rebuilding the Bengals. Because I've got some guys that I think we can do this realistically. Except I think we're going to have to suspend minor belief that Mike Brown might actually care about the team and actually rebuild and focus on it. Because this is just bad. You cannot keep doing this. You cannot have the passing yards leader, the passing touchdowns leader. I think he's tied passing touchdowns leader, the receiving yards leader, and the receiving touchdown leader, and the sack leader all on the same team and have a losing record.
I don't know. I think it might be something to do with the locker room still. I think there's something going on in there. I mean,
what's your theory?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like in some aspects, I feel like it could definitely be. And I mean, I'm not saying Taylor's a bad coach, but maybe it has something to do with him, because there also comes to a point sometimes that some of these teams that have really successful, stints with teams, they eventually sometimes don't always keep the consistency, or like they can't get over that hump. We've seen that with Andy Reid. We've seen that with Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy was stagnant with the Packers for the last decade. And yes, he's gone to the Cowboys and he hasn't really done a whole lot, but they let him go. And same thing with Andy Reid. When he was with the Eagles, they couldn't make it past that specific spot. So he went to the Chiefs, and it just took a little bit of time to build up the Chiefs to be what they are now, which is a dynasty. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily maybe that it just might be one of those things with Taylor that maybe the Bengals and the locker room are looking for a possible change. And maybe it's not even Taylor. Maybe it's not Taylor. Maybe it's who's your defensive coordinator? Is it Lou Anarumo? Yeah, Lou Anarumo. Yeah, maybe it's him when it comes to the defense. Maybe the offensive coordinator is not, clicking right with. I mean, the offense looks pretty dang good. I mean, Jamar Chase had a crazy game, on Thursday. So I can't really assume that the offense is doing bad. I'm really more focused on the defense, but as like a coach, you have to be able to motivate like your entire team. And that's why, like, I always get kind of concerned with the Steelers, because I know that Mike Tomlin can motivate these teams, but I don't know if he can motivate them in playoffs. Taylor, on the other hand, right now, I feel like he can motivate teams in his team in playoffs, but you got to get there first. And so in the season, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm an outsider. I'm not as invested in watching the Bengals, but I just feel like something's off. I know T being hurt probably isn't helping either. I feel like T being hurt and inconsistent this entire season probably isn't helping your offense either, but it is opening up more time for Chase. But that really shouldn't be causing you defensive issues, because T's a wide receiver too. So I don't know. That's just my take. I think there might be a little bit of a coaching, because I remember there was the problem with the Eagles. What was it, last year or 2 years ago with Sirianni? They thought that he had lost the locker room, and they were putting him on the hot seat. Granted, he didn't get fired, but I mean, I feel like this might be even a much tougher situation than what Sirianni went through.
I think I think Sirianni and Zach Taylor are more similar than different. I think I don't know a lot about Nick Sirianni as a person, but Zach Taylor seems like a nice guy. He seems like a guy you'd want to have a beer with and chill with, and like I think that probably goes a long way with a more traditional ownership group like the Browns and the Blackburns are. But at the same time, he hasn't learned. It seems like he's in year 6, I believe, as a coach. And I believe he's working hard. I believe he's like, grinding. And his wife came out and said, like, hey, I haven't seen my husband in 2 days because he's been working so hard trying to get this team straight. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that, like, he is working hard. He's working his ass off trying to get this team straightened up. But the fact is, there have been so many – we've seen from year 1 to year 6 the same things happening. The team starts off losing. The team – we're throwing screen passes on 3rd down. We're having these frustrating losses that are because of bad coaching moments. We're wasting timeouts. We're like just all these like little things that you would expect a first-year head coach to have issues with. Whereas you look up at Detroit, and I've loved Dan Campbell from the beginning. I've loved Dan Campbell longer than some Lions fans have loved Dan Campbell. I have said, like, just wait, give him 3 seasons. And just if he hasn't improved, then sure, you can move on from him. And that's what I give most head coaches. Now, if it's an absolute just dumpster fire, that's different. But most head coaches, I say give them 3 years. And Dan Campbell has become one of the better head coaches in the NFL. He was very frustrating in the beginning, but now everyone loves him because the team is winning. His guys are getting the job done. Zach hasn't learned. The drafting has been bad. The team has not drafted.
I was going to say, I mean, that could be both, though. That could be him and the GM. So that goes into your whole organization.
Dude, I'm cleaning a house. I'm telling you what, in that video, we are cleaning house and we are bringing in the best of the best.
Oh, Bill Belichick.
No, I'm talking like I'll tell you right now, the head coach I want is Ben Johnson.
Okay. Do you want to like? I was gonna say, do you want to save that for a video, or did you want to brief on that real quick?
No. I'll just a little tease. Okay. I want Ben Johnson. I won't tell you who the defensive coordinator is, but he's someone we've talked about on the show a lot. But Ben Johnson is my head coach favorite, and I don't know that the Bengals would go after him, but that's what I think should happen and want to happen. And I think the Bengals need to draft better, because why are you spending a 1st-round pick on a guy who's a backup? That makes no sense.
The only thing I can think of is that maybe they're waiting for him to develop. But he doesn't. But he probably doesn't. Wait, when did you draft this guy?
2022?
Okay, yeah, he probably should be starting by now. Unless they genuinely believe that he's not starter material. I mean, there's some. Well, if it's 2023, then he probably should be getting more reps. I mean, he might not be like full-blown starter. I don't know though. It just really depends on his development.
Your first round.
What do you?
Your first round pick. I mean, I think he has potential, but your first round pick should not be a guy who needs to develop.
Not necessarily, no. But sometimes, I mean, we've seen it. I mean, some of these players do need a little bit of time, even if it's half a season or a year. Maybe the Bengals thought he needed the year to at least be behind somebody. Maybe he was. Did this guy take 4 or 5 years of college? I mean, we have Anthony Richardson, who only did 18 games total in the last year and a half, and he's not doing real hot. And I called that from a mile away, but I did. I'm just going to say, but I think that's a guy that probably, and quarterbacks are a little different than some of these other positions, but I think you also need that time where you need a little bit of time to develop, and I think that might've also been an issue with Kenny Pickett with the Steelers. I don't think he had enough time to develop, nor did he have the player in front of him to develop him, which was Mitch.
Let me ask you this. Let's pretend it's the Steelers. Actually, we'll just go with the Steelers. Let's say the Steelers lose Minkah Fitzpatrick. They do not sign a safety in free agency. What would you want them to draft? The rest of the team. What do you think we'll go bigger. We'll go even bigger. You lose TJ Watt. TJ Watt retires for some reason.
Okay, well, I mean, honestly, it's probably not the most listen, TJ Watt is getting old, man. He's getting up there.
Let's say tomorrow TJ Watt comes out, he retires. First round. What should
tomorrow.
the Steelers draft?
They should replace him in the position. I agree. But
we drafted a corner.
Hey,
to replace Jesse Bates.
Oh, maybe you needed a corner though.
No, we needed a safety because we let an all-pro, possibly future Hall of Fame safety walk.
Yeah, Bates walking was probably but yeah, I don't agree with them walking. I know they couldn't afford it at the time, but I think, or maybe you could. Actually, you couldn't afford it at the time. I didn't think you could have, unless Bates
originally we said we couldn't afford it because we were going to pay T, but we haven't done that.
And you might,
we haven't paid Jamar. We haven't paid Trey. We ain't paying anyone.
The Bengals are rebuilding completely. They're getting rid of you want to talk about cleaning house, Josh? I think they're cleaning the entire roster too, man. I don't think they're going to keep any of these guys. Listen, I think that it is interesting though, because I am seeing teams not do what the Bengals are doing, and that kind of concerns me because sometimes now, even maybe right now, the coaching is tough, yes, but I also think, like you said, I think it might be a problem in upper management because obviously some of the GM, depending on what the coach GM relationship is looking like in the draft class, it's partially Taylor, but it's also partially whoever your GM is, and that's why they say Tomlin and Khan are working really well together because they're able to work things out, and that's why we've been, I think, drafting a lot better than we've had in years past. Sometimes I feel like we've had some questionable picks. Devin Bush, we can go back as far as Ziggy Hood, people like that. But I mean, listen, I feel like to answer your question though, I would most likely draft somebody, but also like to replace TJ Watt, but also know that somebody's going to probably have to at least be his mentor, because there's players out there though that get thrown into the fire and they look horrendous. I mean, we've seen that a lot with quarterbacks, but I mean, players in general looked like that too. So we just kind of have to one step at a time. So, I mean, and I think it would have made sense if you signed Simmons to like a 1-year deal, and then you have Simmons for a 1-year deal, and then your safety, whoever you drafted, is behind him for the year, and then he's ready to go and he gets reps on the secondary team and whatnot. So I get it. No, I get it.
Having a bridge guy is fine. The Bengals they did really well with right tackle. They had Trent Brown be the bridge guy until, he got hurt and Mims got thrown in maybe a little earlier, and he's been fantastic. But having a bridge guy is fine. But you draft a guy saying, we know he is going to be the starter. He is going to be that guy. You don't draft a guy who's a corner and say, yeah, we're going to put him at safety and hope it works out.
That's wild. That is actually wild.
So we're
Josh for GM of Bengals 2025.
No, I want Joe Goodberry or Gridiron Grading. I mean, they do so much.
You don't believe in yourself?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to hire Joe Goodberry and Gridiron Grading.
Nice.
Shout out Gridiron Grading. Shout out Joe Goodberry. Both great X accounts. If you love NFL prospecting, Gridiron Grading, that's a great account. But we are 23 minutes into the show, and all that has happened has been me talking about the Bengals and your camera lighting. But you brought up Anthony. You brought up Anthony Richardson, and I think we were both kind of rough on Anthony Richardson. I got kind of optimistic. I bought into the athleticism, the prospect of who he is. Earlier in the offseason, I really liked A.D. Mitchell, who has not been good. I really liked Michael Pittman Jr., who has kind of regressed. Alec Pierce has randomly had a very good season for him. So that happened. I thought this Colts offense was going to be super fun to watch. I really did. Like, I believed that in my heart, my mind, and my soul. They suck. And the defense, the Colts are just bad all around. The Colts can't tackle. The offense is bad. The question I have for you, and I don't know how much Colts football you've watched. Probably not a lot. But
I've watched at least one game because the Steelers played the Colts.
That's true. That's true. Okay. Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson? Who are you running with at this point?
Oh, man. I mean, the problem is they both haven't had good showings. So, I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say Flacco because I don't think AR is ready, but I think AR did better than Flacco did on Sunday. I don't know how well Flacco ended up finishing with, but I know you messaged in the group chat that he was not looking too hot. I think it was like 0 for 1 and a 57-yard pick six to start off the game, if I remember correctly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the thing is with Joe Flacco is he had that really good year with Cleveland, so you would expect him to at least, as we were talking about with bridge players, be that kind of like that bridge player for Anthony Richardson, who's been struggling a little bit. And maybe that's your sophomore slump, or it really shouldn't be because he only played 2 games in his freshman year, in his rookie year. So there really shouldn't be much of a slump here. But I don't really know what's going on with AR, but I don't know. I feel like at this point, I find it really interesting that they have pretty much come out and have said that Anthony Richardson is benched for the rest of the season. I think that might be a little too strict because you've already bought in the Colts organization has already bought into Anthony Richardson starting. He has already started 8 games total for the Colts. Obviously, we'll put last year aside. He started the first 2 or 3 games of the season, got hurt, and then obviously they benched him, but that was because he couldn't freaking move his arm. This year, he started week 1, week 2. He started multiple games. I know he started against the Steelers. He got hurt, but he's played and he has won games. And no, he hasn't looked good, but I don't know if I necessarily would bench him for long term for Flacco. I may bench him a couple of weeks to get himself resituated, but I don't know. That's just me. I think Flacco might be okay now, but I don't think this should be something. I don't think Flacco should be starting in December, depending on where the Colts are at.
So the argument was originally that Joe Flacco was the team's best short-term solution to make the playoffs. And what's inevitably going to happen here, most likely, is it's going to be between the Bengals, the Colts, and the Broncos for that final playoff spot. So there's going to be some must-win games for all 3 of those teams. Bengals play the Broncos. I don't know if the Broncos play the Colts. I know the Bengals don't play the Colts. So that head-to-head between the Bengals and Broncos could be big as well. Probably will be. Joe Flacco has not won them games. They are not winning games with Joe Flacco. In fact, Joe Flacco, in his 2 starts in November, has gone 2-4 on touchdown to interception. He threw 0 touchdowns against the Vikings. He threw 2 touchdowns against the Bills, but he threw 3 interceptions. He just hasn't looked good.
The problem, though, is like looking at him statistically this season, he has better stats than Anthony Richardson has had in a shorter amount of time. Because I know AR got hurt in the Steelers game, but if you go through from September to October of all of AR's games, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. At Green Bay, 204 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions. Versus Chicago, 167 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. Pittsburgh, he got hurt, so he only had 70 yards. Miami, 129 yards, and no touchdowns, no interceptions. And I'm not encompassing rushing yards for this. And then 175 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. For a total regular season stat line of 958 yards and 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. And then Joe Flacco has had 168, 2 touchdowns against Pitt, 359 and 3 touchdowns against Jacksonville, 189, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception against Tennessee, 179, 0 touchdowns and an interception against Minnesota. And then Buffalo, he had 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions for a total of 1,167 yards, 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So, and I'm only reading that off because if you're looking at it statistically, then I guess you kind of would make an argument to say that Joe Flacco should be that short-term player for you to make playoffs. But I don't know. I guess you're more of a Colts expert than I am.
Well, I mean, this doesn't even have to come down to being a Colts expert. I mean, we can just look at this practically. You think, and the Steelers were kind of in the similar boat, and I think Russell Wilson has kind of shown that he can play for the Steelers, and we'll talk about that. But if you're where the Colts are right now, and you are a fringe playoff team, the And Joe Flacco, eye test wise, has not shown me that he is clearly better than for the Colts than Anthony Richardson. Yes, the stats are better. I don't know. I think AR provides more for the rushing game with Jonathan Taylor than what Joe Flacco does. But I don't know that even if the Colts sneak into the playoffs, they aren't going to go far. They aren't.
No.
The
AFC is looking sneaky this year.
This isn't a year for the Colts to win it all. And they might not want to admit that, but I think they know that. And I think Colts fans know that. Especially like with the amount of them that want Gus Bradley fired, the DC. Here's what I'm asking. Would you rather have Anthony Richardson develop in a season where you're most likely not going to go anywhere? Or would you rather they next offseason say spend a lot in free agency, draft really well again, which I think they did okay this year, and then still have Anthony Richardson developing? I'd personally rather have him develop this year, even if you lose out, which you're apparently going to do anyway with Joe Flacco.
I mean, well, first of all, it's a concept of, is it a win now mentality for Indianapolis? What players are possibly up on contract? What players are they not going to be able to keep? Right now, the Steelers are kind of in this like win now mentality because eventually in the next 3 to 4 years, we're not going to have all the same defensive key weapons that we do now. Cam Hayward's going to be retiring. TJ Watt's going to be retiring. You might have Minka and some of these other guys in your backfield also be retiring. And our offense is still relatively young. Yes, you have Russ on there. You want to build your team around Fields. That's fine. But we know that some of these guys aren't going to stay around that much longer. Hence why it's kind of like a win now type thing. And I think that's why they threw in Russ. But we'll get into all that. But I think it would really come down to, do the Colts believe that they can win now with the team that they do? And I don't know if they can. I don't want to say no, but also the Colts fan base, the Colts organization would have to be okay with throwing away the season, because if Anthony Richardson is looking poor, the games are just not going to look good. And eventually people are going to call again for Flacco to go in. And would that be a simple solution? Yes. But if the Colts are looking to make playoffs for whatever reason, whether it's this player retiring, maybe they're planning on dumping Jonathan Taylor at the end of the season and they want to get him a ring or something. I don't know what the Indianapolis Colts organization is thinking of, but I understand where you're coming from with that, though. I can kind of see having Anthony Richardson start, but maybe they just don't believe that he's ready to start.
I don't think he's ready, but I'm saying if you're going to lose, you might as well let him develop chemistry with A.D. Mitchell. Let him develop chemistry, honestly, with Michael Pittman Jr. Let these young guys kind of get it together. Looking at their free agents, Ryan Kelly, the center, is a big name that they'll need to re-sign. Mo Alley Cox is kind of a big name, probably replaceable, if I'm being honest.
Replaceable, yeah.
They've got Joe Flacco as a free agent. EJ Speed, maybe you re-sign him. He's not someone I need. Julian Blackmon, I'd re-sign, the safety. Ashton Doolin, you could probably re-sign him pretty cheap. He's pretty, or even replace him if you need to be. He's like a borderline practice squad player, I think. A lot of their defense, like Ronnie Harrison, Danny Pinter, the interior offensive lineman. I mean, there's Ryan Kelly is really the only one, and Julian Blackmon are like the only ones that stick out to me as like, okay, you're losing him or potentially.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like then at that point they could be okay with losing. I mean, then again, though, depending on how low that they go on the totem pole, they might have a high draft pick and they might be in that Chicago Bears pressure type situation where, oh, you have to drop this quarterback. He's going to be generational. And then it's like, okay, what do you do with Anthony Richardson at that point? I don't know. I wouldn't tank, but I would definitely try to win. And I think by putting AR in, you're not necessarily tanking. I mean, you're going to develop him, yes, but you also have to like kind of think long term about these weird hypotheticals that could happen. I mean, if Pittman Jr. is frustrated with how Anthony Richardson is throwing to him, or he's not getting the ball enough, he's going to pull a Pickens and want to leave. So, I mean, you're gonna have to battle that too. And if Joe Flacco is that short term opportunity to get you into playoffs. I mean, the problem is, though, is Joe Flacco did not look good in playoffs last year. And some of these teams look defensively better than those teams last year. I mean, Buffalo looks great. Kansas City is fraud. Baltimore is I hate Kansas City, and no, it's not because my team's not winning, because my team is doing really well, but I'm saying that because I think that there should be some games that they probably should have lost. But Kansas City, fraud. Baltimore has a good team. I think Pittsburgh has a good team. Buffalo has a good team. I think there are some really solid teams in the AFC this year, and I don't know if Indianapolis is going to be able to keep up. And yes, they kept up with the Steelers and some of these teams, but I mean, when you're at home, it's different than when you're away. And in the pressure of AR being in a playoff game and stuff, and Joe Flacco not looking too hot, I mean, there's really no win-win here for the Colts. I feel like their backs are kind of against the wall, because there's really no simple solution, in my opinion.
And maybe the answer is, and they're re-signed some of the guys on the O-line. They drafted well, I think, for O-line, though. Dalton Tucker was an undrafted free agent. I think he's been playing pretty well. Goncalves hasn't had a ton of time, but he's played pretty well. I think he had some iffy games against the Vikings. I didn't necessarily see if he played, or if he did, how he did against the Bills. Tanner Bortolini has looked good. I think you've got to extend Ryan Kelly. I think you've got to maybe extend some other offensive line guys, maybe EJ Speed, re-sign Julian Blackmon. And then after that, I don't know that you really have to extend anyone, because Taylor's already been extended. Pittman Jr. has already been extended. You're hoping to develop A.D. Mitchell. Alec Pierce seems to be developing. So you've got some guys. You've got guys you can work with, but they're all in the developmental stage. And if that's where the Colts are right now, that's fine. You knew when you drafted a guy like Anthony Richardson, who had less than 20 starts in college, you're gonna have some bumps. It's gonna be a rocky road. You drafted him based on his potential. So I get what you're saying of it's a hard decision, but for me, it's not really that hard of a decision, because I don't think the Colts are going anywhere. If the rest of this team was doing great, and it was just the quarterback position that needed fixed, then fine. But it's not. It's everything. They can't tackle, which the Bengals can't tackle either, so don't take that personally, Colts fans. But they struggle with tackling. They take bad angles. They've had struggles, and maybe it's a Shane Steichen thing. Maybe his offensive scheme that he's created for this team doesn't work well with this team. I don't know, but I just think I would rather have Anthony Richardson develop, get used to playing well, and then once the defense is good, you can go win some football games. If I'm a Colts fan, I root for the Colts, but Bengals are my number one team. We'll see what happens.
Hey, you're an Indiana boy, so.
I'm an Indiana boy. I want them to do well, although this year, if it comes between the Bengals and the Colts, sorry, Bengals all the way.
It's just how it is, yeah. I agree.
Playoff Joe. But let's talk about the Steelers. The only team that we actually, there's two teams, and we'll talk about the second one later, but one of the two teams we regularly talk about on this podcast that is actually doing well.
Yes.
Despite the miracle, or I guess not the miracle, but the doubts. It's a miracle you guys are good, I think, because we had a lot of doubts about how the Steelers, or I had a lot of doubts about the Steelers. I'm going to stop talking now. Tell me about the Steelers. Teach me.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I do want to discuss the idea with Justin Fields right now. I think that no, not what you think. I don't want you to jump
starting him.
No. I'm talking about
Russell Wilson.
Chill out, calm down. Calm down. We can't trade Russell Wilson. The deadline's over. But I think the thing was when Justin Fields started, he looked pretty good. But I think initially, whenever he got benched, and I was in uproar, a lot of Steeler fans were in uproar. We saw Justin Fields as consistent, and he was winning us games. So why would we start Russell Wilson, who hasn't played a game yet? And I think we were basing that a lot on what we saw in Denver. And even last year's Denver, performance by Russell Wilson wasn't that bad. It was that 2022 Russell Wilson that looked pretty horrendous. I mean, no one really likes to talk about it that much, and I don't even really think that we talk about it that much, but he didn't have terrible numbers last year. And he ended up getting benched because of some weird salary thing that I don't really remember at the top of my head why, but they benched him for a reason for the last 3 games of the season, just to cut him in March for him to come to Pittsburgh. And I think Russ still has it. And I think that the idea, and I want to apologize because I was really on the idea that I think it was really dumb long-term for Justin Fields to be benched. But it seems that Justin Fields is okay with being the backup because he knows that eventually he will start. Now, we don't know how soon that will be, but eventually he will start. And we've seen what he can do. And he is a very reliable source as a backup. And I think that if Russ, God forbid, went down, I would trust in Fields. And it's good to be able to trust in your backup and your possible future. And what better quarterback for Justin Fields to develop behind than Russell Wilson, Super Bowl champion who's been to the Super Bowl twice. And I think long-term, it actually makes a lot more sense now looking at the bigger picture because Russell Wilson over the last 3 games has looked really, really good. Now, in that Jets game, which I got to witness and we talked about it, did not look good at first. And then he started coming together. I feel like he was underthrowing some balls, but catches were being made. At the end of the day, though, he won the game and he did it in style. It was back-to-back 30-point weeks. One week it was with Fields. The other week was with Russell Wilson. This offense looks crazy. Okay. And then you go up against the Giants and you struggle a little bit, but Russell Wilson still holds his own. The Giants are just really weirdly good on the road. They really like to play tight games on the road, but when they're at home, they look weird. I don't know. I'm not really sure what's going on with the Giants, but if they could figure out how to close games, they would probably be like 8-2 right now, not 2-8. So, but that's besides the point. When it comes to Russell Wilson, I think he looks really good. And I think that he really wants to win here. And this team looks very different. And by different, I mean, over the last couple of years and probably, and by different, I mean, after Ben got hurt in 2019, I feel like that 2-year period with Ben, even when we went that undefeated 12-0 in 2020, I didn't think that Ben looked the same as he did in 2018 and 2017 and 2016. And then we had some weird years for those 2 years. And then we had Kenny in 2022 and we had Kenny in 23 with the Mason, the whole kerfuffle that we had last year. And now this year, it's a very different situation because Russ looks good. Russ is playing good. Team is rallying around Russ. The defense is looking solid. Yes, even with the injuries, like Alex Highsmith just got hurt over the weekend, and now he will not play against Baltimore this weekend. However, I still trust in this team that even though Highsmith is hurt, that the other players will be able to rally and be able to win against the Ravens at home. So what I'm trying to say is from the Steelers' perspective, I think the quarterback situation was what we needed all along. I think after Ben got hurt and was out for the season in 2019, I think that probably should have been the end of an era, in my opinion. But I'm glad that things worked out the way that they did, because if Ben would have retired after that season, we wouldn't have had the Kenny Pickett experiment. We probably wouldn't have had all of these different things. And I think everything worked out perfectly because we ended up with Russ and Justin Fields. And long term, there was a report that I read that talked about they wanted to try to find a way to keep both of the quarterbacks by the end of the season, which would be really interesting because if they kept Russell Wilson and Justin Fields for another year or two, is Russ that short-term ideology to try to win you the Super Bowl, and then Justin Fields is that long-term longevity player to get you for the next 10 years? So I don't know, but it is fascinating to see that they're really investing in these quarterbacks. And I mean, I wasn't really high on the Mike Williams trade, but he looked like he had one big boom play that ended up being very big for us in that Washington game on Sunday. But for me, I think coming off of the Giants win, going on the bye and coming back to Washington and winning in Washington, even though you won by 1 point, still nonetheless winning that game 28-27 is a big statement win for the entire league. Because initially the Steelers, yeah, you're beating the Jets, you're beating the Giants. Russell Wilson, oh yeah, he beat the Jets and the Giants. So those teams are like, well, Jets are like kind of like low, middle low, and then Giants are like low, low. And then and then Justin, and then like the Steelers really haven't played like a lot of teams. And so this now is the big challenge for Russ. And this is a great statement win for Russell Wilson to beat Washington in Washington and have that momentum going into the Baltimore game on Sunday. Now, his biggest challenges now will be over the next 5 or 6 weeks, because he has, I don't know the schedule off the top of my head, but I think it's Baltimore, Cleveland.
You have 2 against Cincinnati.
Yeah, you guys, then Cleveland again, and then Philly's in there somewhere. Like Philly is, we play all of our conference games or all of our division games, and I'm going to try to name this off the top of my head if I can. You have Baltimore, then you play Cleveland on Thursday night, and we always struggle against Cleveland on Thursday night. Could Russ reverse that? Then you play, I believe, Cincinnati the following week, and then you play Cleveland at home, and then you play Philly, and then you play Kansas City on Christmas. And we also play Baltimore again in there somewhere.
You play us again somewhere too.
No, we play you at the end of the season. That game isn't scheduled.
Oh, is it the last game? Okay.
Yeah, and then Baltimore, I think we play maybe after Kansas City or somewhere in between there. Either way, like we've got a long stretch here, because like we've got Cleveland at home on December 8th. We've got Cleveland away on next Thursday. We got Baltimore this Sunday. We've got another Baltimore game, somewhere in there. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to be said with what Russ can do. And if Russ can cook against those teams and stuff like that, I mean, obviously I don't expect us to be perfect, but I'm pretty confident right now this team, if I was to bet, I would be betting on the Steelers right now to do really well. Just against the
Super Bowl, or just
a deeper playoff run, I would say, just because, well, first of all, looking at it from the perspective that I'm looking at it, I think the Steelers can win the division. I think they can. Baltimore right now poses their only big threat. Mm-hmm. And if we can keep the consistency that we are, I think we can beat Baltimore twice. I think we might struggle away in Baltimore, but I think we can win at least at home in Baltimore against Baltimore. We do struggle away on Thursday night against Cleveland, but I don't think that Cleveland should pose too much of a threat. And when it comes to Cincinnati, no offense to you guys, but I think that if our defense can contain your offense, I think our offense can run circles around your defense. I mean, we did it last year. I think we can do it again. And that's no offense. I really don't disrespect the Bengals.
We suck.
But those are, and that's home and away. So that takes up most of the rest of your schedule. The Eagles, I think, might be a big issue, but I'm not sold on losing to the Kansas City Chiefs. Everyone might think I'm crazy, but you're playing in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day at home, and Kansas City has looked very shaky. They got really lucky against the Broncos. I'm not sold on them. I really think that the Steelers can finish out pretty strong. And I think there are some teams that are going to give them some trouble in the playoffs. I think Buffalo will give them immense amount of troubles depending on what the seeding looks like. If Buffalo has a 1 or a 2 seed and Pittsburgh has to go to Buffalo, that might be problematic. But if Buffalo has to come to Pittsburgh, it might be a different story. It's really all about the seeding. And I really think that if the way that it works, I think that this could be the year that the Steelers finally win a playoff game. And it makes me happy because I haven't seen them win a playoff game since I was in middle school, high school, maybe my freshman year of high school. Like, that's crazy. Like, that is disappointing. They haven't won since the Obama administration. And if you put it in that way, we have gone through now the Trump administration, the Biden administration, and now we're going to go through another Trump administration starting next year. And if they still haven't won a dang playoff game, that is really disappointing. So we'll see. But I think that this could be the year that we can make a push, because I think that although the AFC is sneaky good, I think that there are some teams that aren't as, like, I feel like the Steelers are competitive, more or less. I think Kansas City, although their record is good, I don't think they're a powerhouse. I think Baltimore or I think Baltimore's really good. I think Buffalo is a powerhouse. And I know I'm not talking much about the Texans, but CJ Stroud hasn't looked to that optimal point, and they've had a lot of weird wide receiver injuries. So that might hurt them this season. Next season might be different. I was really high on Houston this year, but might be a little different. But I think that this, out of any year for Pittsburgh, I think this could be the year that you do a deep playoff run. Do you win the Super Bowl? The NFC looks pretty hot. I'm not going to lie. Detroit looks really dang good. I don't know if I would want to play Detroit in the Super Bowl, to be honest. But then again, I wouldn't be disappointed if we lost the Lions in the Super Bowl, because then the Lions fans would be happy they would win a Super Bowl for the first time ever. So I don't know, but we'll see. I don't want to jump. I mean, we're still early in the season. We still got a lot of division games left. We have no idea how the rest of the season is going to pan out. The way that it looks right now, it looks good. But the one thing that does concern me, nobody's talking about it. TJ Watt's expecting a baby in February. And you know when the Super Bowl is? February. So guess
that baby gonna come early.
I hope so, because if the Steelers are making that deep playoff run, he may not be around for the Super Bowl.
Do you want it to come early, like during the playoffs?
I mean,
because if it comes in January, that'd be during the playoffs.
Well, it's not gonna come that early. The expected date's February, so I would, if it happened in like late January or early February, if it happened in your championship game, I would take my chances in the AFC Championship game than the Super Bowl. Would you rather lose in the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl? I'd rather lose in the AFC Championship because we didn't make it to the Super Bowl. I feel like losing in the big game is a lot more. I don't know. You've gone through it more recently.
I don't know. They both sucked.
You've gone through. Yeah, I was going to say, have you gone through it more recently? Which one hurt you the most?
I cried both times.
Okay. Well, which one did you cry harder about? Like, I don't know.
Super Bowl. I cried more about the Super Bowl.
Okay. Well, there you go. So I would much rather lose in the AFC Championship, be very disappointed, than lose in the Super Bowl and be even immensely disappointed because we made it. And I don't know when we're going to make it there again, you know?
Well, so let's talk about the Lions real quick, right?
We talked about the Lions.
We got 9 minutes. Let's talk about them here for a second. You brought them up, but I want to. They're good. They're like that. They're my new favorite team to like beat. I mean I don't think. I was texting a guy who's a Lions fan. It wasn't Dion. Shout out Dion. But the Lions, if your quarterback can throw 5 interceptions, which granted they weren't all on him, I'll give him that. There were some where I was like, Jared, what are you doing? But some of them weren't on him. They were just fluky plays. And that Houston defense was getting up in his face without Will Anderson. Shout out Houston defense. Shout out Will Anderson. But that Lions team, first of all, the Lions defense held the Texans offense to no second half points. I don't think they scored in the second half at all. If you can win a football game in primetime against a very good Houston Texans team with your quarterback throwing 5 interceptions, you can win anything.
And it's fascinating, though, because we're talking about the Lions. I think the end of the season is going to be interesting for them as well. I mean, they obviously have to play Jacksonville this week, which that's Detroit should demolish Jacksonville. But then you look at some of these other games. They have to play Buffalo. They have to play Green Bay again. They have to play the Bears twice, which regardless of how well the Bears look, at the end of the day, the Bears are still a divisional team, and they're going to give more than likely Detroit a little bit of trouble. Maybe not a lot, but they're still going to give them a little bit of trouble. And then San Francisco, they're beat up San Francisco team, but there's still pieces that could give you some problems. But then you finish with the Vikings, and I think the Vikings game is a little interesting because Vikings defense is still really, really good. So will they be able to shut down Jared Goff again? And will they be able to capitalize rather than, than not? So, I mean, I don't know. I think the end of their stretch is going to be really telling as well, but this team could go 16-1.
Yeah. I mean, counterpoint, they just added Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith didn't play against Houston,
which is crazy because
Zadarius Smith is very good. He doesn't get talked about because he was on the same team as Myles Garrett, but Zadarius Smith can be a game wrecker. And he has played on other NFC North teams. He's been on the Vikings and the Packers.
So he knows the teams very well.
He knows the teams. He wants to beat those teams, I'm sure. He's going to be motivated. And the Lions are winning games in a non-controversial way. They aren't winning where it's like, oh, at the last second, this penalty flag won them the game.
Kansas City.
Or even Baltimore. And that's not even necessarily shade at Baltimore. I'm just saying the Lions aren't winning games because of the refs. At least it's not being talked about as much if they are. And I don't think that they are. The Lions are going out and they're saying, we are a football team that is going to be in the Super Bowl. We need to find a way to win this game. And they're throwing touchdowns to their offensive tackles. They're throwing touchdowns to David Montgomery's throwing touchdown passes to Jared Goff. They're having fun out there. They're looking like a championship team already.
They also like pooped on Tennessee like a couple weeks ago, which I thought was really funny.
They've embodied, they've said we are going to be grit. That is what their mantra has been. And during the game against the Texans, that's what I saw. That was what I felt like I was watching. I was like, this team is grit. They went into the crucible, got burned, came out on top. That's a winning football team right there. So Detroit Lions fans should be super excited. Even like they've had guys get suspended. Jameson Williams got suspended for 2 games, and it didn't slow him down. They've got Sonic and Knuckles, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You got Sam Laporta. They've got guys. Penei Sewell's a beast. Have you watched that? Have you watched Penei Sewell run? Kind of, yeah. Like if you watch a Lions game or look it up on YouTube later, and this goes out to the audience as well. Look up videos of Penei Sewell run blocking, because you will see corners run away from Penei Sewell. It's almost like Derrick Henry. They're like, we're just gonna like let that one go, because Penei Sewell's a beast. So I love watching the Lions. They're fun to watch. I think that they could easily win it. Health and stuff matters, and it comes down to who's hot in December a lot of the time. But I hope it's Detroit winning the NFC. Then again, though, there's a lot of fun NFC teams. Though I still think Minnesota's a fun NFC team. I think that some of those other teams over in the NFC are relatively fun. I think the AFC isn't as fun. I mean, the Steelers being in it for me is fun, but for anyone that's on the outside looking in, like Kansas City at the top again, like there's no like there's a lot of emerging there's like a lot of emerging teams from the NFC though, like from the dirt, from the rubble. Whereas the AFC, it's like a lot of the same teams. You're not hearing like, oh, the Raiders are fighting the Chiefs for the top spot. You're not really hearing about these. It's the same teams. It's like, oh, guess what? Like even in the NFC, like the Washington Commanders are another one. Like, yes, Philly's in it, but Dallas isn't talked about right now. San Francisco isn't talked about. You got Detroit, you got Green Bay, you've got Seattle that's kind of like lingering, you've got LA that's kind of lingering, but like you've got some of these teams that are lingering, whereas like in the AFC, it's like, oh, the Steelers again, the Baltimore Ravens, and you got Kansas City, and then you've got whoever, and Buffalo, and then the rest of them are what, the Bengals, the Colts, and what was the other one? The Dolphins? No, Dolphins are 3 and something.
Yeah, so it's Bengals, okay, consistent. Colts, consistent. You're not hearing like the Jets are emerging. You're not hearing that the Tennessee Titans are coming in again, or like these random teams. I don't know. I think the NFC is a lot more fun this year. I mean, that's just me though.
Go Lions! Beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl. Kill them. Anyway, that's all. That's all I got for today.
Give me a heartbreaking loss, if anything. Let me lose 31-28 on a blocked field.
No, I want 75-0. I want blood.
No.
You want to lose the Super Bowl on a blocked field goal?
I said on a heartbreak.
Dude, you don't want that.
On a heartbreake. That's what I mean.
That now, but
I don't. I don't want to get destroyed though, because that looks even worse. Would you rather? I don't know.
I would much rather lose in a blowout, because then I can emotionally prepare for the loss.
Yeah, but then at least on Twitter, we're not getting trashed on that badly. At least like, oh wow,
we lost on a heartbreak. Jamar was open, and like all that. Like that. I lost on a heartbreak. And you don't want that. You got anything else to say?
Go Lurs.
Go Lurs.
Whoa, you said go Lurs. No way. Clip that chat. Clip that. Go
Clip
Lurs.
that chat. Thank you for listening to today's show. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We can be found anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube at No Butts Show. Our social media pages are NoButts_show on Instagram. My Twitter is Josh_Butts_2001. If you would like to reach us, you can email us at bullmoosepodcast2 That's the number 2 at gmail.com. Finally, our spread shop is in the description, so check out the merch. Once again, if you enjoyed today's show, like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, go do something nice for someone.